Welcome in, everyone, to a special episode of my Dynasty Fantasy Football YouTube channel. I originally had a rookie targets episode for today. We'll push that back to tomorrow because we have big news. But before we get into it, make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a like and a comment on this video. With that said, let's get into Stefon Diggs being traded to the Texans. So, start with the trade breakdown. The Bills get 2025 second, Texans get 24 6th, 25 5th, and Stefon Diggs. Honestly, it's a stunner for me. Earlier in the offseason, I thought the Bills would trade Diggs. Then it realized that I thought they would work out their differences. They let Gabe Davis go. He has a high cap hit. They don't have any other outside wide receivers. They eat a $31 million dead cap charge to move Diggs. So they're actually paying him more to not be there this year than they would if they had him. As for the Texans, they acquire a very reasonable contract, as usually is in a trade for the acquiring team. 2024 cap hit, $19 million, essentially all guaranteed. 2025 through 2027 cap hits, it's $18 to $19.5 million per year. None of it's guaranteed today. So if they don't like it after this year, they can get out of the rest of the contract easily if it does not work out. Now, we'll get into breaking down all of the fantasy impact, but let's start with our featured player in the trade, and that's actually Dalton Kincaid. A lot of the argument against Kincaid was that he wasn't that great with Dawson Knox healthy, and that with Diggs on the team, the target volume just wouldn't be there for him to really step up in 2024. Well, now, even though the Bills' offense makes almost no sense as it's currently constructed, I can't see a universe in which Kincaid ever comes off the field. He needs to play 75-80% snap share minimum because he's their only proven real high-end offensive weapon, at least in the receiving game. In 2023, as a rookie, 73 catches on 91 targets for 673 yards and 2 touchdowns. Didn't get the attention because he didn't score. 2 touchdowns on 91 targets is kind of unlikely. So positive touchdown regression is coming for Dalton Kincaid. 80.2% catch rate. That's insane. That's very, very, very strong. So we love to see that. Now, people talked about the Dawson Knox splits, and they have a case. With Knox in the lineup, 7.6 PPR points, 4.2 catches, and 33.9 yards a game. Without Knox, 11.7 PPR points, 5 catches, and 52.6 yards per game. However, moving forward, I just can't see any way that Kincaid is not a critical part of their offense. Like I said, I don't know what it's going to look like. Gabe Davis and Diggs are gone. Their main 2 wide receivers, who we're about to talk about, Khalil Shakir and Curtis Samuel, combined for less than 10 snaps in 2 wide receiver sets this year. Something about that's going to change. I don't know which one of them is going to be, but Kincaid's going to be their centerpiece along with maybe a first-round wide receiver. So I moved him ahead of Mark Andrews in Dynasty. I'll take the 4 extra years of youth with Kincaid, moved him up to tight end 3. And he's closing in on Trey McBride in that tight end 2 position. Of course, Brock Bowers will be in there, but I don't have the rookies included in my rankings. I do that after the NFL draft. So that's why I have Dalton Kincaid as of now. If you bought him earlier in the offseason, you're probably really happy. If you want to buy him now, I don't know if I want to do that. It's probably going to be too much of a price increase, but he's been a target for me all offseason, so I'm hoping that you bought in already. Now, as for these 2 players, we'll talk about them together. Curtis Samuel and Khalil Shakir, the existing Bills wide receivers. I don't get the Bills plan. I said that. These 2 players were used in the slot consistently over the last year. Curtis Samuel was fine in 2022 and 2023 for the Commanders. He played this role. Very similar stats, 64 catches, 656 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Had those 38 carries in 2022. Similar receiving stats, but fewer carries in 2023 because Antonio Gibson was a little bit better that year. Basically, though, Samuel is only a slot receiver, 74% slot rate. Some of that other 26% was in the backfield. So he hasn't played anything other than that in a long time. As for Khalil Shakir, similarly, slot receiver, 39 catches, 611 yards, 2 touchdowns, almost 70% slot rate. Never played in 2 wide receiver sets. And bad players got in ahead of him in 2 wide receiver sets. So I don't know. What I do know is that the Bills will almost certainly pick a wide receiver at 28 overall. That'll be their wide receiver 1. Or they'll trade up a little bit to get someone that they really want. Whoever it is, that'll be their wide receiver 1. They don't have an outside wide receiver on the roster. So whoever that wide receiver is going to have no competition for that role. My guess is that Khalil Shakir will shuffle between the Z and the slot. Samuel will remain as the pure slot, kind of backfield option, maybe complementing in that role like he did in Washington. But it's just a guess. Samuel's money suggests he's vital to the offense. They don't really have any commitment to Khalil Shakir. So I think a lot of what's going to decide is, are the Bills going to run more 12 personnel? They run more 12 personnel. I don't know between Samuel and Shakir how they're going to split up that role. It would take one of them off the field a lot. For now, I'm not raising either of them that much. I moved Samuel up 4 spots to wide receiver 56. Shakir 6 spots to wide receiver 57. I think Samuel has the safer floor. The money says he's going to have a role. Shakir, I think, has more upside, but could have no role at all if Samuel is ahead of him in the pecking order. If I could get any second for either of these, looking at where they are in the rankings, I would take it. Maybe even a couple of thirds. These strike me as roster clogger types, not the kind of wide receivers I want on my Dynasty team. And I would love to trade them for picks that I could use to acquire assets with higher upside, specifically running backs in the second round. Now, let's shift over to the Texans wide receivers, and we'll talk about all 3 of them together. Nico Collins, Tank Dell, and Stefon Diggs, because I think they're all interrelated. My main takeaway is that I think anyone saying that they know exactly how this will pan out is kidding themselves. I've heard people, well, it's going to hurt Collins, but not Dell. Well, it's going to hurt Dell, but not Collins. I don't see any evidence to how you would know that. I don't see evidence. Here's what I generally lean on. Productive players generally stay productive, especially at wide receiver. There are very clear roles in this offense. Nico Collins will be the X receiver. Stefon Diggs will be the Z receiver, as he was in Buffalo, complementing Gabe Davis. And Dell, with his size, will play a majority the slot receiver. That's clear, but what's not clear is how the targets will be distributed among those 3. And I don't think anyone really knows. So what we do know is that all 3 of these guys cannot finish in the top 15. That's not possible. It is not possible for all 3 of them to be top 15 wide receivers. That's not going to happen. And it's a stretch even for all of them to be top 24. That is possible. It's happened a couple of times. The Rams were an example. And it is possible if you stretch it. But even that, I would bet against it. I would think, one of them is probably going to be outside the top 24, at least. For me, all of them lost dynasty value with this move. Let's start with Collins. We know that in 2021, he didn't do all that much, just 446 yards and touchdown, 2.4 catches and 31.9 yards a game. 2022, he struggled with some injuries, but when he did play, 3.7 catches, 48.1 yards a game, he stepped it up despite bad quarterback play. And then in 2023, he was amazing. 80 catches, 297 yards and 8 touchdowns in just 15 games, 5.3 catches and 86.5 yards a game. He was a solid wide receiver 1, no question. Now, is a part of that Tank Dell was injured and CJ Stroud was amazing? Yes. Do I think that Nico Collins is going to duplicate his 2023 numbers? No, not with Tank Dell healthy and Stefon Diggs there. But I think he'll be closer to 2023 than he was to 2021 or 2022. As for Tank Dell, as a rookie, he came in and he was excellent. 47 catches, 709 yards, 7 touchdowns, 4.3 catches, and 64.5 yards a game. As you saw earlier, he did much better in his rookie year than Collins did in even his second year. But Collins in 2023 showed an upside that Dell never showed outside of a couple games here and there. And there are some size concerns. It led to his injury potentially. There were other issues with his size. So I understand the concerns on Dell, but I do think he's a very talented player. We saw that. As for Stefon Diggs, 1,000 plus years for 6 straight years, 103 or more catches every year in Buffalo. He has been an alpha wide receiver there. So 30 wide receivers who are 30 plus who change teams have a very rough track record that almost never works out. Almost never. Very rare. Usually is a disaster. But we know that CJ Stroud is such a great quarterback and that Diggs commanded the volume up until they changed the offensive coordinator to Joe Brady, which I talked about in a recent episode. So, conclusion. Nico Collins, dynasty value. I moved him down 2 spots to wide receiver 15. I still think that he has a lot of upside, but I don't think I'm going to rank him as a redraft wide receiver 1. And I am a little bit concerned about his contract. He's a free agent after this year. He's not as young as I think maybe people think. He's already 25. So we'll see. But I think wide receiver 15, he is still a high-end dynasty asset for me. And that has not changed. Tank Dell, moved him down 4 spots. Wide receiver 18 to wide receiver 22. I'm less confident in Tank Dell. Do I think he's probably still going to be really good? Yes. Am I a little bit concerned? Absolutely. So if I had Collins ahead of Dell before, I'm going to say that the guy I had ahead before is safer, and the guy that I had second is a little bit less safe. So I moved him down a little bit more, but still in good value range. Stefon Diggs, I moved him down 2 spots. I do like that he's out of the Joe Brady offense, which was obviously not working for him, but he went from somewhere where he was clearly the wide receiver 1 to, is he even the wide receiver 2 here? If you told me that, I don't think he's going to finish as the 1. I think that's Collins, but I'm not even sure if Dell or Diggs is the 2 in redraft. So I moved him down to wide receiver 37. Honestly, if you could get him for like a mid-second, I'd probably take it, but I don't think you're going to be able to do that. So he's probably just a hold for me. Definitely a sell if you can sell him for a late first. I would absolutely do that. And Dell is probably the buy for me. If you could get Dell for a late first, or, maybe even a couple of seconds, he would be the one I would target. Now, couple last things. Dalton Schultz. Unfortunately, the volume has to come from somewhere. We know Schultz is not elite. We know he's just okay. He's volume-based tight end play. He got a contract extension, but that's more for the real-life Texans. And he's essentially mostly dead. He's not going to duplicate this line. 59 catches, 635 yards, and 5 touchdowns. He's not going to duplicate that. He's the 4th option on the team behind 3 strong wide receivers. Collins and Dell both missed time last year, and there was no Diggs. Schultz is someone, if there's an injury, he'll still be a streamer, maybe in strong matchups, but the upside's gone. I moved him down 2 spots, and over a round of overall value was lost. So he moved down a tier for me as well in my rankings. And lastly, we'll close on the quarterbacks, Josh Allen and CJ Stroud. Is it crazy that I want Josh Allen or CJ Stroud over Josh Allen in Dynasty now? I don't think it's crazy. Stroud is over 5 years younger than Allen. Allen's not old. He turns 28 in May. I think that Allen is going to be franchise quarterback in the year for league for another 8-9 years. That I don't doubt. What I do doubt is how long is the running going to hold up? Because that's what makes Allen a high-end fantasy asset versus just a really good fantasy asset, is the running, the goal line touchdown production. It's getting to the point of starting to think about that. Now, additionally, Allen's career as a passer only took off when the Bills traded for Diggs. It's fair. Stefon Diggs raised that concern on Twitter. And I can't disagree. The numbers don't lie. These numbers without Diggs, first 2 years of his career, 56.3% completion, 30 touchdowns, 21 interceptions, 6.6 yards per attempt. Then with Diggs, all of a sudden, 137 touchdowns, 57 interceptions, 7.4 yards per attempt, raised the completion percentage by almost 9%. CJ Stroud, if you notice his rookie year numbers, a little bit lower on the completion, but 23 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, 8.2 yards per attempt, 273.9 yards a game, almost as good as a passer as Allen's last 4 years. And that was as a rookie. So now he adds Stefon Diggs while retaining all of his previous weapons. Might be crazy, but I did move Allen down from QB2 to QB4. He's still in the top tier, but I have Mahomes 1, and now I have Stroud 2, Jalen Hurts 3, and Josh Allen at 4. But, again, these are all great assets. They're all still in my top tier. Don't hear what I'm not saying. I don't hate Josh Allen. I just like CJ Stroud in Dynasty a little bit more. Now, if you like the video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. I love doing these types of news videos, breaking down the immediate fantasy impact. And I'm sure we'll talk about this more on future videos, especially about the draft, who the Bills are going to draft at 28 overall. They trade up. We'll see. But as always, I want to thank everyone for watching, and I'll see you all later. Peace out.